The legacy of French colonialism often arouses mixed emotions. Many see it as a period of brutality and dispossession, leading to a desire for cultural resurgence and sovereignty. At the same time, certain aspects of French culture and language have endured, creating a cultural bridge between Africa and France. This duality continues to influence African politics, social structures, and identity, reflecting the lasting impact of colonialism on the continent. In this interview, Dr. Arikana Chihombori-Quao, the former African Union ambassador to the United States, talks to us about the horrific effects of the legacy of colonization in Africa, and specifically in the former French colonies. Listen to what she said.
The legacy of colonization remains to be a serious issue for the African. It is the legacy of colonization that makes it difficult for us as a people to push back. Let me give a very simplistic example, and I use simplistic examples because I want people to really understand what's going on. Using the example of Niger, there is a mutiny in the school cafeteria. The students are sick and tired of a bully who's been taking their lunch for centuries. Finally, they've garnered enough courage. They now have enough knowledge to understand, and they're ready to stand up and push back against the bully. The question then becomes, why has it taken the students so long to stand up and push the bully back? It's because the students have been made to believe that you are inferior. The students have been threatened. The students believe that they are not as good as the bully. The headmaster, some have been smart enough and have tried to push back. Guess what? They were assassinated. But finally, the students now have enough knowledge. Question is, why has it taken this long for the students to have enough courage? But be it as it may, the legacy of slavery, the legacy of colonization left the African in a feeling inferior, feeling they're incapable, admiring everything else that somebody else is doing, that everything African is undesirable, that we're always looking to what those who don't look like us are doing, and we want to emulate what they are doing. The biggest risk to Africa's development is the mind. Secondly, the average African leader is fighting with their hands tied behind their back, and in some cases also blindfolded. If a president of a country, my daughter, let me take you become the president of Nigeria today, with all good intentions, you are told, do not talk about your military, because we got that under our control as France. Do not talk about your financial resources. We control your central bank. We manage your financial policies. Do not talk about your finances. We have that under our control. Do not talk about your natural resources. Those belong to us. All your contracts, we shall choose and decide who builds your country. Now, if you stay away from all that, you are now free to run your country. What do you have? You've given up your natural resources. You've given up control of your financial resources. You've given up control of your military. What kind of a leader are you? I don't care what intentions you have. I don't care how Pan-African you are. I don't care how smart you are. Your hands are tied behind your back and you're blindfolded and you're supposed to engage in a fight and win. How? So I'm saying, I can tell you, I was joking with a friend. I said, I'm pretty sure right now, President Bazoum is probably happy. Because what kind of country was he leading? He had no power. He had nothing to control. That's a joke of a leadership. So once we understand that, we then go back and say, okay, fine. With whatever you were given, what have you done with it? Now I'm ready to start putting blame on the leader to say, okay, you had a small budget for healthcare. What did you do? Did you at least build one hospital during that year? Now, if it's a foreign minister, a minister of health, who is now failing to do something with that budget for 1 year, that's why we start putting the blame on local levels to say, yes, as a minister of health, you were given a budget. Show us at least one health hospital you built this year. Show us what you have done. So yes, we do have our own leadership issues. Leadership within very limited spaces. And even in those countries that are not former French colonies, we still have major presence and control by the multinationals who existed during colonization. They just went low, but they're still, by and large, running African countries. They're the ones who are the major employers, and they can manipulate the politics because of their presence within the country. They can gang up against a country and decide suddenly 10 of them, 15 of them can leave the country, taking away with them hundreds and thousands of jobs. So they still have some soft ways, underhanded ways of dealing and upsetting African economies. It still goes back to the former colonizers. So as we talk about our issues in Africa, let's not look at them in isolation. Let's understand in a holistic way all the issues that are coming to play when we end up with millions of youth unemployed. Why? Understand the entire process. Millions of children going to bed on an empty stomach. Millions of children dying. Women dying while giving birth to another life. Let's understand the entire genesis of what is going on, because the tendency is for us to be pigeonholed and follow into this rabbit hole of a tiny little issue without understanding the genesis of that issue. And that is the holistic approach that I want the new African to have.
Former African French colonies grapple with the legacy of French colonialism, but they have the agency to set themselves free from its enduring influence through a multifaceted approach that includes economic self-sufficiency, cultural revitalization, and political autonomy. One of the most significant steps is achieving economic self-sufficiency. Many former French colonies remain economically dependent on France, primarily through the use of the CFA franc, a currency that is controlled by the French treasury. To break free from this financial grip, African nations can consider adopting their own currencies, promoting local industries, and reducing reliance on foreign aid. Economic diversification and investment in sectors such as agriculture, technology, and renewable energy can foster self-sustaining economies. Preserving and celebrating indigenous cultures is essential in reclaiming identity. Encouraging the use of local languages, supporting traditional arts and education, and embracing cultural heritage can strengthen a sense of pride and autonomy. This process also involves challenging the Eurocentric narratives that persist in education and media, highlighting African history and achievements. Many former colonies remain entangled in political relationships with France that limit their sovereignty. African nations should seek greater political autonomy by renegotiating or re-evaluating agreements that may undermine their independence. This includes reviewing military agreements, trade pacts, and political influence. Regional integration and collaboration with neighboring countries can also help reduce dependency on former colonial powers. Education plays a pivotal role in breaking free from colonial legacies. Reforms that promote critical thinking, civic engagement, and inclusive curricula can empower future generations to challenge existing power structures and envision a more independent future. Encouraging a sense of unity among African nations is crucial in overcoming the legacy of colonialism. Initiatives like the African Union aim to promote solidarity and cooperation among African countries, allowing them to collectively address common challenges and advocate for their interests on the global stage. Land and resource ownership are often contested in former colonies. Implementing fair land reforms and ensuring that natural resources benefit the local population can reduce economic disparities and empower communities. Breaking free from the legacy of French colonialism is a complex and ongoing process. But with determination and concerted effort, former African French colonies can assert their independence and shape their destinies on their own terms. By addressing economic, cultural, political, and educational dimensions, these nations can build a brighter, more self-reliant future.